All right, guys, welcome to tonight's call. It is May 7th, and I am so excited to have a guest from corporate tonight. So typically we interview other leaders from different teams. Sometimes we interview our very own leaders that are having great success. And the reason I reached out to Gillean, and when I have her introduce herself, well, I'm introducing her, but when I have her start, I'm going to have her share a little bit about her story and how she got started with Isagenix. But what I was so excited about was I've had a few people reach out to me, were concerned and not sure how to answer some of the tougher questions. We've got a lot of fitness people on our team, and sometimes fitness people are tough sells. They think they know it all about nutrition. We've got a lot of people in the medical field. Sometimes they can be a little tough too. And sometimes they ask a little tougher questions. And I think it gets a lot of people a little nervous, especially newer people. And so I thought it would be really great to gather some questions up from you guys. So I've already messaged Gillean with all the questions that I had. I've got a couple more that have come in if we have time for. We may get to that. I'm not sure. If we don't, then I'll get with Gillean privately and try to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. But Gillean, when I introduce you, there's something I've never even shared with you that I wonder if you remember. But when I got started, I think we got started around the same time. I signed on May 29th, 2012. So it's going to be 6 years for me this May. And soon after that, I took a trip to corporate with a top leader from another company, and we had a tour. And it's the only time I've ever done that. And they brought me into a conference room, and I believe it was you and Sarah Richter sitting across the table from me. And
probably, yep.
And you guys shared, and I'm sure I said it out loud. I usually say what I'm thinking. I'm kind of an open book. I was shocked because you looked like you were 18 years old, and I couldn't believe how knowledgeable the two of you were. You were both so young and beautiful, and so you told me about your schooling and all, because I had to say something like, "My gosh, are you even out of college?" Because you look so young. But that was my first impression of you, was how young and beautiful, but yet so smart and savvy and knowledgeable you were. So that was my very first impression of you.
Thank you. I just have to say it's all Isagenix, you know?
Yeah, you're actually 50, right?
Yeah.
But I
turned 30 this year, so I'm in my 30s. So.
And
yeah.
You're a new mom. You got a little one. And
yeah, I'm actually home. Unfortunately, she is under the weather today, so I'm doing the whole at-home mom working, but grandma's here, so it's all good.
Well, thank you for still being with us.
Of course.
Gosh. And I also, at every conference and event, I see you in the gym. So we've worked out together in the gym.
We have worked out, yes.
Yes, so I know that fitness is important to you as well. So thank you so much, Gillean, for your time tonight and being so willing to answer all of our questions. And what I'd like for you to do is why Isagenix? When you graduated college, was this your first job out of college?
I worked at a hospital at first and quickly learned that was not for me. So I actually had part of the dietetic internship, you spend time at a hospital. And since I was there for 3 months, basically as part of my internship, they said, "Well, do you want a job?" Like, they basically trained me. And I was like, okay. I mean, you don't say no to a job when you're graduating college, you know? So I had actually applied for a job at Isagenix on the research team and was just waiting to hear back, but I didn't want to say no. So I said yes. And I worked there for 2 weeks before I put in my 2 weeks. But I continued working at the hospital on Saturdays because I loved the experience, but it was just a different mindset and mentality of people that are really sick, and the last thing they want to hear is, what they should be eating, because a lot of times they're scared, and it's just not a good environment for that. So Isagenix was really the right place for me. So I've been with Isagenix this summer will be 6 years, which is kind of crazy. So it's been a long time.
Right after me, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been awesome, and I've had so much experience, which is great for the company. They really want their employees to grow and learn. So I've been on the research team, the sales team, and recently moved to the marketing team a few months ago to focus on product education. So it's perfect that I'm on this call.
That's great. And then also, we've loved your knowledge and experience around the Bedtime Belly Buster and bringing that to us. And we do have a group that's starting on the 10th. So we're fired up about that too. So
I am so excited about that because it was a huge project, and I just seeing it come to fruition and people using it, and it's been really great to see and seeing the results too. I've been like dying. The before and after photos already have been so great. So it's good to see people using it.
Yeah, that's so cool. And Gillean was also on the cruise with us, so we got to spend some time with her on the cruise as well. Okay, so let's get started because we do have a lot of questions and I want to be very mindful of your time. Can we talk first? You've been part of the whole movement to get some dairy-free products. So we have a lot of people that use the dairy-free products on our team. So everyone that has been freaking out is now calming down because we know we're getting them back in. I know I ordered a pack last week, and my dairy-free shakes arrived no problem, and we get to order them individually, I believe, this week. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So starting on the 14th that week, I know Travis Ogden said things will start to be available. So it's almost here.
All right. And I know you can't give us all kinds of secrets, but I know one thing that I get asked all the time is, are they going to come up with a dairy-free Isopro? Because so many people that are doing dairy-free need more protein as well. So that's a big one I get. And also just, around the dairy-free products, do we have,
there's definite plans. Yes. So one of the cool things about me being on the product marketing team now is I've actually been able to see like our timeline, our calendar products. I can't give it all away, but I will say there are definitely dairy-free products in the, lineup for in the next 3 years. We have a 3-year product pipeline. I know there is also, they are creating a dairy-free Isopro. So it's just a matter of getting it perfected and making sure that it's going to taste right. With dairy-free, it's a little more challenging, the food science of that, to make it actually be creamy and delicious. So I know that they're working on that. I don't have a date or anything, but of course, being the proud proponent of the Bedtime Belly Buster, I am pushing for it because I'm like, I want my dairy-free people to be able to do it too. So know that, yes, they are working on more dairy-free, including a dairy-free protein supplement. They can be added to shakes or used by itself. So that's all I know. I don't know any dates yet. I wish I did, but yes, I know that that's important to everyone. And I will pass along the recommendation again to just say, hey, people are wanting it. Come on, guys. So
they're also wanting seasonal shakes because they feel very left out when we have all these seasonal fun shakes that they're not getting them. So that's another one.
I'm with you on that one too. And I can have the dairy shakes, but I actually really like the dairy-free. Like I love the texture of them. And so I'm usually a dairy-free shake person. So yes, I'm with you on that.
Yep. And I do a little bit of both. So I absolutely love that. Okay. So how about, we get a lot of questions from, and it's mainly from people that are, like I said, in the healthcare industry or gym people that want to know why we are not labeled certified, labeled GMO free, all of that. So what's your best answer when we get questions like that? How do you recommend we answer those questions?
For sure. And first of all, I just have to say the questions you sent me are so good. They're like the ones, and I did a little document, put my answers in, and I sent it over to our research team just to make sure I got a couple eyes on it to make sure everyone got their input in. So these are some good responses, guys. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to like GMO is letting people know. I say first thing, Isagenix does take product quality and safety very seriously. And I can say personally, I've seen the behind the scenes when I've worked on the research team, and I can see, I have meetings with our quality assurance team and our development and our innovation team where, we'll get a product that comes in, well, this will be it'd be trendy. We could sell it fast. It's cheap. But we don't want to do that. So first things first is we do take quality and safety very seriously. The second thing I think is really important to share is our no compromise policy. So that's usually what I lead with, is to explain to people, what is that? And if you're saying, I don't know what that is, isagenixhealth.net, a lot of the responses that I'm going to share for these questions, that is your go-to resource. I actually recommend putting your email address in and signing up for whenever they post the new articles. That way you don't feel overwhelmed like you have to learn everything, but starting from now on, as they post articles, a lot of times it's in reference to something that's come up or a big question or a new study that came out. So you'll start to be up to date on all that stuff. But again, that is really your go-to. So the no compromise policy, there's 4 big things that it encompasses. Number 1, we test the raw ingredients. So that's before the ingredients even get made into a shake or made into a supplement. We actually test those components of the shake to make sure that they are pure, that they do have the levels that they say they have. And I will tell you that a lot of times, in fact, with our dairy-free shakes, we test it and it's not what it should be. And so we don't accept it. And then sometimes it unfortunately does result in us not having a product in time or running out, which is not what we want. We try to put a lot of checks and balances in place not to get there. But most of the time that's what it is. We're just not accepting some of those things. And the ongoing joke in R&D is, well, where does that ingredient go? And I'm not going to, it doesn't go in the trash. It goes somewhere in another product that's probably on the shelf at a cheaper price somewhere, So we're really strict on those raw ingredients. The second thing that we look at as part of our no compromise policy is for contamination. And this is huge, right? With food safety, there's stuff all in the news all the time. And so the things we look for are like microbial activity, heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides. Those are things that we look at. And in fact, I know one of the questions was organic, and we can jump into that a little bit more. But those are the things when you're looking for that organic standard, we test for all that. In fact, there's based on our quality assurance policies, it's more strict in a lot of ways than organic. So I think that's really important to share with people is we test for a lot of those things already and ensure that our products are free of the pesticides, herbicides, and any of those heavy metals or microbial activity. The third thing we do is final product verification. And this is important because even though we test those raw ingredients and then we check for contamination, we could just put it into a package and send it out. But we actually say like, okay, let's check it again. Now it's made, it's into a bar. We actually have a protein shake created. And we do that final product verification to assure, again, it is free of any of those microbial activity, the pesticides, herbicides. We test it again. And then the fourth thing, which is probably makes us stand out from a lot of other companies, especially ones where you can get it at a cheaper price because they don't spend the money on this additional testing, but it's third-party validation. And what that means is we are sending our products before they ship out to our customers. They ship out to a lab that tests them. Again, they have no financial ties to say, this is safe, even though it's not. So they, as an independent organization, can say this is contaminated or this is not, it says it has 20 grams of protein, but it only has 15. So they test that stuff. And so we have that third-party validation to ensure that our product really does meet the standards and the nutrition label amounts that we have on the label. So that's a pretty unique thing compared to a lot of other companies. So those are the 4 things that we are really the key components of the no compromise policy. But if you're like, that's a lot to go into, you don't have to be the expert. Again, we have amazing articles on isogenicshealth.net. So if someone has that question, I would literally go to Isogenics Health, type in the search bar, no compromise policy. And there's a couple articles throughout the years that we posted. There's podcasts on there too. So go check that out. And that's a great way to send them the information. And lastly, I just want to note that when we can use non-GMO ingredients, that it makes sense, that it's correct for the product, that it doesn't hinder the taste, the texture, the food science of it, we will use non-GMO ingredients. And you'll see in some of our newer products, I think more and more as we come out with new products, they'll start to be incorporated in there just because we know that it's important for people. But we're always staying up on the latest science to make sure that it really is valid and worth the price. Because if you can imagine, those aren't cheap. Just like you go to the store, the non-GMO or the organic are more expensive. And we always take that in consideration because we want our customers to have a product that they can afford too. So just the bottom line is there's a lot that goes into it. I know the Cougars and our executive team, they're always making sure that it's going to be a safe and effective product. And really the best way to promise that is through our no compromise policy.
Awesome. And I know there's some people that no matter what we tell them, what studies we tell them, the information we give them, if it does not say certified organic and non-GMO, they will not put it in their body. There are some people that, and I know some associates get very hung up on that, and it gets them totally rattled. And so we just need to know how to address this, and sending them to isogenicshealth.net is definitely, when I get someone that is really, really picky and finicky, that's what I do is I send them there. I don't try to debate with them because they know more than I do. So I don't try to debate with them or convince them. I send them there, let them do their own research. And if they're not satisfied, then, hopefully they'll come back around when other things don't work,
Yeah. And one other point too is, Usually when someone has those questions, they're coming to me defensive already. And I get it, because I've been there too. I was a super skeptical in fact, the dietitian world is like way skeptical. It's like whole food only, no supplements. And so I even find myself, when I go to the dietitian conferences, feeling kind of out, I'm not really part of the crew because I work for a company that provides supplements. So I think more and more people are starting to get on board with the science. So I understand that, but I always say to someone, because again, they're coming to me kind of defensive from the very beginning, is like, I love that you care about what you're eating, that you care about what you're putting in your body, that you want something that's going to be safe and nutritious, and that's awesome. And I think that, a lot of times foods outside of isogenics, when you're in the grocery store, maybe choosing the organic or the non-GMO is a better choice. Sometimes you need a guideline just to give you some guidance on, do I get this product or this product? And it's not always the case, but I always, I just reassure them that like, that's awesome that you care about what you are eating and you want it to be pure and clean. And I do too. And that's why I use isogenics.
That's awesome. Okay. And the next question I'm going to ask is, this is around natural flavoring. And I remember listening to a great podcast that David Despain did on this. So we could always refer people back to that. But the question was, why can't we use actual whole food flavors, for example, vanilla, rather than natural flavoring? And I know there's a great answer for that one, because that was a fabulous podcast.
Yes. And there's actually a great article too. So if you want to skim something versus listening, you can check. And I actually pulled some of the stuff out there because that's something that was David is the expert. So I was like, I'm going to go to him and get the information. But it's really interesting because really we are using the natural ingredients. So if you think about like a flavor like vanilla, it's actually made up of multiple, they call them volatile compounds. So it has multiple different components that make that flavor. And if you heard what those compounds, the names of them, they sound really scary. They sound like, I looked up a couple. So wild cherry or almond is benzoyl halide. Ethyl butyrate is pineapple. Methyl silicate is wintergreen. So I was talking to David about this because I thought this was really interesting. So we are using the natural flavors, but the labeling, the way that the guidelines for labeling on a product is to use that terminology, natural flavors, in order to convey to consumers when they're reading the label that it's actually multiple components rather than just one thing. It actually is multiple components that make up that flavoring. And also it helps reduce the confusion, where if you saw like all these really crazy compounds on a label, it might be like, what is that? So this is actually, guidelines from the FDA about how you label your products. We have to follow those. We can't get around that. And so using that terminology of, natural flavoring is what they want us to use, because it's conveying to the consumer that it's multiple compounds that make up this flavor. I put down this note, I thought this was interesting. There's more than 1,200 different natural flavors that can be used to make various combinations. So just think about like chocolate mint or, peach mango. There's a lot of different components of flavoring that go into that. So the bottom line is, it is a natural flavoring, and the way that it's on the label is per guidelines to put on the label. And again, I love the article, the podcast and the article on isogenicshealth.net. That's another one where you read that and you're like, whoa, I had no idea that orange is actually 20 different of these compounds that make it that flavor. And that's why it's labeled this way. So really interesting food science there for you. So that's one that I would probably send the link, because there's a lot of crazy words. To try to
That's awesome. And I've heard people say, you guys can shake your heads if you've heard this, if I can't pronounce it, I'm not going to eat it. And so here we have all these natural flavors that they wouldn't be able to pronounce. They don't know what they are, and they're going to think it's bad for them, where here it's an all natural flavoring. So that was awesome. This is probably going to be a call that I just have to put the link out for every team, not just my team, because I think everyone.
I love it. These are good questions. So I love educating on this. So they're great questions.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the organic certification. So is Isogenics trying to obtain high quality organic ingredients to allow us to obtain a USDA organic certification? That's how the question came in.
Totally. Yeah. And I think this is a good question because a lot of people are asking this. So it's out there. It kind of goes back to that first answer on the no compromise policy. So I would definitely refer back to that. I also want to point out that usually organic standards refer more to the farming, what you have to follow for farming, rather than the actual quality and safety of the food. So that's kind of interesting to think about that. So that's why they have those studies out there where actually some organic produce actually has more herbicides and pesticides. They're just considered organic herbicides and pesticides versus products that don't use the organic farming standards. So it really is all about how you're growing and producing and cultivating the food, but it's not as much focused on the actual quality and safety of the food afterwards. So that's why I always refer back to that no compromise policy, because we do that. We look at the food before we actually consume it, and we make sure it does not have any of those harmful, herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals prior to sharing it with someone. And that doesn't mean organic is bad. I think it's just it gets to a certain level, and I feel like Isagenix just takes it another step to ensure the quality and safety of the products. At the same time, I will definitely say that, again, we know that this is a popular thing out there. We know people are demanding it. And so as a company, we're always considering that as far as new products and ingredients. Again, a lot of times it's expensive. So do we want to pass on that price, or how are we going to make that work for this product? Also, sourcing is pretty difficult for that to get the organic standard. So we have hundreds of thousands of people using Isagenix. We have a massive supply that we have to meet that demand. And so you can't go to, I love the farmers market down here in Gilbert, Arizona, but they aren't going to be able to produce the amount of food that we need to create our products. So that's also something that as a company we take into consideration. But again, the bottom line is we have that amazing no compromise policy to ensure that our products really are pure and safe. And we listen to our field. And if it's something that is demanded and, we really want to invest in, then I know that our executive team will definitely do that.
Awesome. All right. So this next one is going to be around cleansing. So I have someone that I have a ton of respect for. He understands nutrition. He understands fitness. He is a 4.0 chiropractic student, going to be a chiropractor, and he has concerns around cleansing. Now, I know all of us that use the cleansing products, we totally get it. But what you were saying, he really wanted to hear from a dietitian. Yeah. And what you were saying, how dietitians are more skeptical of all of that. Were you skeptical of cleansing first?
Totally. Oh my gosh, I actually started using Isagenix in high school because my mom used the products, and I didn't even know cleansing was a part of Isagenix. I just used the shakes. I didn't really realize cleansing was a part of it. So, and as a dietitian, you hear cleansing, horrible detoxification, like people are doing these crazy 10-day, they're not eating for 10 days and only drinking this lemonade, cayenne pepper stuff, so it becomes a fad. But I think the big point to know is that if you do it right, and if you follow really the principles of intermittent fasting, sometimes the word cleanse throws people off. Yeah. So if you stick with intermittent fasting, that's where the research is, and that's and actually it is kind of getting trendy. I'm seeing it in like my women's health magazine, but that's really what it is at the basis. And I think the word cleanse kind of gets a bad connotation because it is associated with a lot of things that aren't very good for you, things that have laxatives, or again, like a 10-day where your body's going to be stripped of muscle mass too. So it's really getting to understand what the Isagenix cleanse is, and that's when I understood, okay, I see the science behind this, I understand how it works now. But I was totally turned off initially because there's so many bad cleanses out there.
Okay, so what he was saying to me is he wanted to hear from a dietitian their viewpoint on this, and are there high quality studies that you've come across to suggest that cleansing is effective? Now, we all know that it is.
Sure. No, this is great. And again, I love this because people care. Like, people just jump into something without educating themselves. That's a lot of times where people cause harm to their bodies, or they hurt their health more than benefit it. So I love the questions. So really the science behind intermittent fasting, or in our case, cleansing, as we call it, Isagenix, there's a lot behind it. Everything from weight loss to detoxification to healthy aging. So really, I think the most popular ones are the ones that are discussed mostly at Isagenix are weight loss and detoxification. But there are tons of studies behind it. So I went, again, isagenixhealth.net is definitely a go-to. In fact, they just published an article not too long ago with a study. I was just looking it up. It was published in 2017, and it was a meta-analysis. So what's so great about that kind of study is they take a lot of studies and they put them all together to get to a conclusion. So instead of just saying, one study, this one group of people, we're going to put them on a fast and see what happens. A meta-analysis looks at a bunch of studies and puts them all together. So this was a really interesting study because it had so many different studies to make up the response. And so just as far as like the weight loss component of intermittent fasting, I loved this. The result of this intermittent fast was that together with the intermittent fasting interventions, those in the studies achieved an average weight loss of 23.6 to 38.8 pounds. And that was over a 12-week period, 12 weeks or greater. So yes, as far as weight loss, I think that one is very supported. You'll find it all over the place. And again, it's intermittent fasting is days of lower calorie intake paired with days of higher calorie intake. And for me, that's like genius as far as how Isagenix adopted that through our cleanse days and shake days, because the result of that is weight maintenance. And that is the key, you guys. We're trying to find something that maintains weight. You know, I've worked with so many people and it's the yo-yo dieting. And it's really hard to lose and keep it off. And so with intermittent fasting, you're really targeting the fat loss. And then on the cleanse, on the cleanse days, you are targeting the fat loss. And on shake days with Isagenix, you are really building muscle mass and nourishing your body. So when you pair those two together, you're going to get weight loss results that actually last. The second thing I want to touch on is the detoxification, because I think that's probably the most controversial component of intermittent fasting. And I will say there's definitely needs to be more science. There's some there, and we do have, even in Isagenix has a clinical study that is published in 3 different journals, peer-reviewed journals. One of them was in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And that one looks specifically at the detoxification process that happened in our 52-week study. So I just want to focus on that one. So what we saw in that study was after 12 weeks, they had a 33% increase in total PCBs released. So getting really sciencey on you, but basically PCBs are a toxin in our body. And most toxins like to live in our fat cells. They're fat soluble. And so they kind of like get cozy in there and they stay in there unless you lose weight. So we actually see through the process of weight loss actually increasing the detoxification pathways in our body because toxins are being released. And so the body's like, I got to work with these. I got to excrete them. The liver is that #1 organ in our body known to really support that process. And that doesn't mean that our body never goes through detox. It's constantly processing stuff, but we know that when you are going through a weight loss phase and you're burning through those fat cells, which actually house the toxins, your body is going to be able to excrete those toxins. And that's what we saw in the study. So again, after 12 weeks, we saw a 33% increase in those PCBs release, those toxins that we don't want in our body. After 52 weeks, we saw an additional 20% greater increase in PCBs compared to the placebo group. So that's one study I would definitely encourage him to look at. It's on isagenixhealth.net. I can send you the link afterward as well. Actually, I have it here. I think maybe I'll get it and I'll post it in before I leave, and I'll post it in the comments because it's really interesting. But I will say, as far as detoxification, we have some studies that support it. But I think the biggest thing is the testing to show, to actually test toxins being released is a really tricky thing to measure. And so that's really something that I think as science grows and develops, we'll look more into that. So there's promising information there and more to come.
That makes perfect sense. And then I don't know if you're watching the chat box, but everyone wants to know, why do we not call it Nourish for Life like they do in the UK? Like everyone believes that would be
I love that.
Yeah, we love that name, and it would be so much easier to explain to people too. Because when I do Sip and Samples health and wellness events, I'll always ask people if they're afraid of the word cleanse. Everyone's hands goes up. Yeah. They all think it's a colon cleanse. So
yes, I will pass along that feedback. I love that. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Another question is around why do we use a synthetic vitamin for our folic acid source rather than methylated folate? This is really sciencey. So some of you are going to go like over your head. Other ones are like, frothing at the mouth to hear the answer to this. With the rising awareness around those affected by MTHFR gene mutation, and I know you know the question, but why do we source any of our vitamins with synthetic ingredients?
Sure. And this is also a great question. Again, awesome podcast and article on Isagenix Health, so go check it out. But really, so the folic acid, this has been really interesting over the last couple of years to see it develop. So what was people were doing these tests, and they were realizing that they had this gene mutation for this gene that actually it converts folic acid to methylfolate in our body. And what we were seeing is people were not having that enzyme to actually convert it. And so it's been this big thing. People are saying, well, I don't have this, so I can't have a bunch of folate because it's not going to convert in my body. And I don't want a bunch of folate in my body because of any interactions that can happen with that. So what people are saying is, well, I need to have less folate, or I need to have the form of methylfolate that doesn't need that conversion step because my body doesn't have that process to do that conversion. But what we're realizing in science, so I actually did a Google search before this because I just kind of wanted to see what people were looking at if they're out there. I'm always so stuck in like PubMed and science stuff. So for me, when I look it up, it's like pretty obvious right here. It tells me this, but I wanted to see what's out there. And so what the going, gossip out there is if you have this gene mutation that you should not have folic acid. Because you don't want to have that build up in your body. But actually, when you're looking at some of the research, they're saying people might need actually more folic acid because that conversion rate is so low. So to assist with that conversion rate from folic acid to methylfolate. And so I will say it's newer in the science. Again, it's all of a sudden it like became this thing the last couple of years where people saying I had this gene mutation. And Isagenix, our team is always looking at research studies all the time. And I will say for right now, there's not enough strong evidence to say that you shouldn't be using folic acid if you have this gene mutation. In fact, it might show that you might need more for the folic acid. Know that the amount that we have in there is really that to help with that optimal level of folic acid in your body. And we're always open to reformulating if we say, hey, we're seeing multiple studies to support this. But at this point, there's really nothing to support that. And a lot of the things I saw in the Google search it wasn't really credible. I didn't see a lot of links to clinical studies, or if it was a really small study that was done in a short period of time, and the evidence just wasn't really supported. So even I ran these questions by our research team just to kind of get insight in case there was anything new that they've been seeing. And they were all still on the same page of like, there just isn't evidence there to really support that. In fact, they might need more of it. But know that we are always open to reformulating. In fact, one example of that is our isocalcium. We had this product, a calcium supplement, but we realized that when people were using our 2 shakes a day plus our calcium that's provided in our vitamins through our Complete Essentials packs, they were already getting plenty of calcium. And you don't want too much calcium because you can have heart complications from that. So we look at, science changed the amounts that you needed and the way that the body processes it. So we got rid of that product. So just knowing that we're always open to that. But at this point, as far as the methylfolate, folic acid question, there just isn't enough support to reformulate products at this point.
Awesome. And then how about the synthetic ingredients side?
Yes. Okay. I love this question because, again, this was one that I learned a lot from this, researching it and talking to our team too. This was a few years back. I think I was actually on the research team when we wrote an article about this, but it's really interesting. So first, let's talk about food-based. So some people say, if you go to like a Whole Foods or a Sprouts, there's a lot of food-based supplements. But really the important thing to note with a food-based vitamin is that it's very unsustainable. So the fact that it's actually going to go to work in your body and do what it's supposed to do is that shelf life of it being on the shelf, the probability of that happening is very low. So it's a very unstable product. Also, it takes a huge amount of processing to take of a raw food and break it down to the vitamins. In fact, it's usually they have to use a lot of harsh solvents to actually extract the vitamins. So that's the opposite of what we want. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to provide a nourishing whole product that doesn't have chemical solvents in there. Plus, you'd have to use, again, a huge amount of food to get to those vitamins and minerals. I didn't write down, there's a great example in the article. It was something like so many tons of kale to get enough of the beta carotene. So it's very unsustainable. And, as a company, that's a big initiative. I'm sure you guys have seen Eric Cooper all over the place. Even our office, we got rid of plastic water bottles and stuff. And so it's really to have a great product, it's not sustainable to do it that way. Now, also I just want to talk about, synthetically derived. So there is a difference between synthetic and artificial. So that's a really big point. So yes, synthetically derived is created in the lab. It's through a fermentation process. And in fact, the way that vitamins are created in our foods that we eat, most of them actually use that fermentation process or something very similar to create those vitamins. And so it's a natural process that's created synthetically. It's not an artificial process. So that's really important to know. Also note that we will never use, like a lot of times you can do synthetically derived vitamins using like petrochemicals or tar or nicotine. Of course, we don't use that. It would not be in alignment with our no compromise policy. So again, I think the big thing to note is the difference between synthetic and artificial, knowing that we take into consideration things like efficiency, sustainability, safety, how it's going to impact the environment as well. And we use a process that has been known to really have an effective use so that when you take the supplement, it actually works in your body. And that's what we really want. And so we do either vitamins that are naturally derived or through a fermentation process. And I will note too, some vitamins are best naturally. They work better in your body when they're naturally derived. And so that's what we use. Things like vitamin E, the alpha tocopherol is actually more beneficial for you than the synthetic form. Same thing with vitamin D3 versus vitamin D2. The natural form it works better to get vitamin D levels at the proper amount in your body. So we use the natural form. So it's just a matter of looking at the science, what's most effective, and what's really going to benefit your body, whether it is through a fermentation process or a naturally derived vitamin. So we take that all into consideration when we're creating our products. And again, tons of information, isagenixhealth.net, amazing article all about it.
Okay, I'm going to give you an easy question now.
Okay.
Because I feel like we've been nailing you with all these hard ones. All right, let's talk about live enzymes in the shakes. So I have not heard confusing messages on this, so I was kind of surprised with this questions because someone said that they were hearing that there's live enzymes in our shakes. They want to know, how long we have before. When we were taught, when we first started 6 years ago, we were taught to drink the shakes within 15 to 20 minutes. That's when they're most effective. So can you just kind of talk about, maybe, there's different things out there. What is Isagenix recommending?
Sure.
And then kind of piggybacking onto that, when you're adding IsoPro, what's the proper ratio for that if you're wanting protein?
Yes. Okay. So yes, we do. And so here's one thing to know is that the terminology we like to use is active versus live enzymes.
Okay.
So we have active enzymes. You'll see in the ingredient label. In fact, that's one of those things that kind of maybe scare people away because if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. But when you see the names of active enzymes, they are long and it's hard to pronounce. I see a list of them here. I'm not even going to try right now. But so enzymes, the purpose of them is they assist with digestion, right? They help break down food components in your stomach. And so, especially with dairy products, that's something that can be really challenging for some people. And so those digestive enzymes help break down the food so you can absorb it more completely. So how they work. So usually after about 30 minutes, really the biggest thing is the ingredients will start to separate and it'll impact the taste and the texture of the shake. So it's really not going to impact the nutritional components of it. So the idea of the timeline is the enzymes aren't going to like deactivate or anything, but your shake is going to have, kind of a weird texture. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. I just usually drink mine right away. But if you've ever left a shake out accidentally on the counter, you'll see it kind of separates. And that's part of the process. It's due to those active enzymes in there because they're going to work on your shake. But, also just the way that the food science again works, it's going to separate. It's not going to taste as good. So the timeline that we recommend is mostly for you to get a good tasting shake that isn't going to be all clumpy and gross. And the active enzymes are still going to be beneficial for you in there. Another thing is to know, I've heard the heating your shake. So usually if the water is at a boiling point, so 215 degrees Fahrenheit, it can decrease the activeness of those enzymes. It doesn't mean that the shake, the nutrition components of it is totally, not worth it. So if you use the shake to bake, it's still going to have a lot of the components, the protein, the fats, the carbs are going to be in there. It is possible some of those enzymes are affected by the heat. But again, it's one of those things that it's a percentage of it. So you're still going to get the great nutrition of the shake if you bake with it. And again, just the texture and the creaminess might be a little off if you let it sit out for a while. And then you said the protein. So the best way to use IsoPro, so Isolane Shake is our meal replacement that has protein, carbs, and fats. IsoPro is a protein supplement, mostly just whey protein and milk protein concentrate. So actually, the way that Isolane Pro was created, so Isolane Pro you can get into packets. We noticed people were actually doing a scoop and a half of our Isolane Shake, again, the full meal replacement, and they were adding in a scoop of Isopro, just additional protein to get to 36 grams of protein. So the Isoline Pro packets that you guys see today is because people were creating a higher protein shake. And so it's literally just a mix of the two. So you can create it yourself, but it also, the idea was this is probably gonna be for more active people that are going to the gym. They're gonna want it in a packet that they can throw into their shaker cup, super easy. And that's where the idea derived from. So the higher protein shake, I personally, I love to have the higher protein. What I notice mostly for myself is better satiety. I'm fuller longer. Also, people that are getting highly active, they can add protein there. They might even add in some additional nut butters or oats or something because they probably need more calories if they're that active as well. Also, people that are aging, as we get older, we tend to lose muscle mass and gain fat, and our body is not as receptive at absorbing protein as we get older. So higher protein our body can get more benefit out of it if it has a higher protein component. So yes, 1.5 scoops of Isoline, 1 scoop of Isopro, that makes Isoline Pro. So you can make it at home, you can buy the packets, whatever is easier for you.
Okay, awesome. And the last one that I gave you, and we're running low on time here, was hysterical because the timing of this question could not be more perfect. What are your best suggestions of getting rid of a muffin top?
I love this one. And of course, one of my suggestions, but I did write a couple other ones down. So number one, I think it's really important if someone is struggling, or even this kind of goes with the plateau. Like if you got a plateau and you're trying to get past that weight loss plateau, I always tell them, what are you eating outside of isogenics? Because sometimes you can start out really good and you're still thinking you're doing okay. And then you realize, I've been actually adding creamer to my coffee, or I've been adding an extra scoop of peanut butter into my shake. So I think, outside of isogenics, just kind of hone in on that, and let's think about what we are eating for our shakes or snacks and our meals outside of isogenics. Number two, exercise. And it's not necessarily, you can't really target just belly fat. It's going to be full body fat that you're targeting. Even with the bedtime belly buster, it's definitely, people see the results in the belly, but it's going to be targeting fat all over your body. So exercise is going to be one of those things that's going to assist with fat loss, including belly fat. So that's another one where, nutrition is a component of that. I always say 80% nutrition, 20% exercise. But with the exercise, a big thing to focus on is getting some resistance training in. So even, of course, anything is great. Going on walks or doing the elliptical is awesome. But if you really want to target fat loss, it's all about the muscle, guys. Getting some muscle. And I'm not talking about you don't have to get huge. You see me in the gym all the time and I'm still called a twig. I'm trying to get toned from my employee IsoBody challenge here. #amped mom. That's what I'm going for. But it's really, especially for women, it's really tough to get super big and bulky. It's not as easy for our bodies to do that. And muscle is the key to weight loss. It just is this component in your body that is super greedy. It burns calories. I always love to share, if you think a big bodybuilder, they eat thousands of calories a day because their body is just churning and burning through so much energy because of all that muscle mass. So if you can just take a portion of that, add some muscle to your body through some resistance training, you're going to be burning more calories by having that, burn from using those muscles throughout the day. And exercise is, of course, going to assist with that as well. The last two things for Muscle Shop, one is compliant cleanse days, so sticking to it, following through. I will say I'm a 1 cleanse day person, but if someone is really gung-ho, they're reaching a goal, they have a trip coming up, the back-to-back cleanse days is really going to get you the fat loss faster. And then, of course, getting the bedtime belly buster at night. So getting that protein at night, it's a really fun way that people aren't utilizing that time to take advantage of getting weight loss goals. So by getting protein at night, again, it supports muscle mass, which again, it's going to boost that metabolism. Burning those calories is what we want. And finally, it's also going to support with sleep. So sleep is so important for weight loss. And if you're struggling with sleep, or last night, I told you I'm home with my daughter. She was up at 10:30 and 2 with fevers. So, the next day you find yourself kind of lagging and you're feeling fatigued. And a lot of times you end up going for food because your body's craving food. It needs energy. It's exhausted. So by getting good sleep, it's going to help with your weight loss goals too. So the bedtime belly buster, I love that. Everyone's doing it right now, so you got to do it. But I love it. It's a great thing to incorporate when you're working towards a goal or really trying to achieve something before a trip or event or wedding or whatever.
That's fabulous. Awesome. Well, I could go all night long asking you
I know.
questions, and we really got through the bulk of them. I had a couple last minute ones come in today that I'll private message you, and maybe we can come up with some answers for, but I can't thank you enough. I know there's a few people, I'm watching them nodding and taking notes that really love the science behind things. And I think, if we have a little more confidence when we're talking to people, it makes it a little less scary. If someone is, we do have people that are more knowledgeable than us about nutrition, and that's okay. We have the resources and the places to send them. So thank you for isagenixhealth.net. I just think that's such a valuable resource. Yes. I send people there all the time. I don't try to be the expert and answer all the questions, especially the difficult ones that might scare me a little bit. I send them there and let them do their own research, because they're going to be happier looking at the doc.
They can explore and take time. And exactly.
Absolutely.
I see some belly buster questions. Can I answer those really fast before we go? Okay. So I just wanted to address these. I saw these popping up for you guys. So the belly buster, you can do it for more than 2 weeks. I will say most people do it for a shorter period of time. That's kind of how it came about. Again, this was created by the field, and then then Isagenix was like, there's got to be something behind this because people are getting awesome results. So most people do it for a shorter period of time, like leading up to something. But if someone wanted to do it more often, that's totally fine. I think you just have to consider that it is additional about 130 calories. So if it is replacing that's maybe a sweet treat you have at night, or you just consider that when you're including it in your daily routine, if you're going to do it longer than the 2 weeks. So it can definitely be longer. Again, most people usually do it leading up to an event. And so it's usually about a 2-week period for a challenge and kind of getting you set for something. Another question was how long between dinner and the bedtime belly buster. So usually bedtime belly buster about 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed. So, backtrack a little bit for whatever time you want dinner to be at. So if you want, again, 30 to 60 minutes, whatever works for you is usually the best way to go. I think that was it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. And I know there's people that do that, people that work out a lot, they'll do it every single night forever, because they are trying to hit protein goals. They're trying to get, so much protein in their daily diet every single day. And that's a very effective way to do it. So there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, I know Dr. Paul Arciero loves the bedtime belly buster idea. So all that protein pacing, it just has so much science behind it. So yeah, a lot of people do it for longer than the 2 weeks.
That's great. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Gillean. And I hope you guys enjoyed this call tonight. Such a great, knowledgeable call to hopefully really help you being able to talk to people with a little more confidence and know where to send them. And don't feel like you need to be the expert. We're never going to sound like Gillean. I'm sorry. Most of us are not going to be able to sound like her and be able to answer questions like that. So it's nice that we have resources that we can go to and send people to. So thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here tonight. And I will post the recording, and I will share the recording, Gillean, if you want to share it anywhere else. If these questions can help all of Isagenix, absolutely, you're welcome to share the call. And thank you so much of your time. I hope your little girl feels better.
Thank you. I'm sure I can hear her giggling with grandma over there. So she's doing a lot better. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving of your time so freely and being with us tonight.
Of course.
All right, guys. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
You.